Welcome to the Writer's Way podcast, where we celebrate writers who have completed their books and inspire writers who haven't. Join Laurie and her guests as they talk about writing, books, and life in between chapters.
Sponsored by the I Can Handle It, I'm the Dad t-shirt. Find it at lauriewriter.com. Hello, everybody. This is Laurie at the Writer's Way podcast. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm here with Ryan Schroeder. Hello.
Hi.
Nice to see you again.
Good seeing you.
We met at a conference in Vegas in the fall, and it was very smoky.
Yeah, and then I had to run a race like 2 days later.
Yes, and you felt like you had smoked nonstop for 4 days. I'm heading back to Vegas in 2 weeks. Different hotel, so I'm hoping that it will be less smoky. I've heard you can't get away from it, but
yeah.
Anyway, thank you, Ryan. Okay, so I'll stop blabbing. Tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, who you are, what you do.
Sure. So I've always wanted to be a writer. I come from a family of educators. My grandma on my dad's side was an English teacher, and she did community plays. She's a play director. My dad is an art teacher, and my mom was a remedial reading teacher. So I've always been surrounded by books and education and art and all that great stuff. So one of my earliest memories actually is just laying on the carpeting in the kitchen, like this very 80s kitchen, with like orange and green and brown, and like writing stories while my mom's trying not to step on me while she's making dinner. And then like I'd go to my grandma's house and she'd have these leather bound books with gold edged pages that were written by like just these classic books like Hemingway and Charles Dickens and all this stuff. So I was always just like surrounded by that sort of thing. And then I grew up in a small town in northern Wisconsin, and I have some friends that I've known like since birth, and two of them have very infectious laughters. And so I learned from an early age that if I could get them laughing, then I could get everybody in the room laughing. And so I really just kind of fed off of that. I really liked bringing joy to people and making them laugh. And so then from there, I guess I could say that, that's one of the earliest examples I found of like finding your audience, like knowing who it is that you're trying to write for. And then, I grew up in the 80s, and I watched movies like Rambo and Predator and Commando and like a lot of like movies I probably shouldn't have been watching. And so I wrote stories kind of based on those things. When I was 10, I wrote a story about this guy. His name was Jake, and his girlfriend was kidnapped, and he had to save them. At one point he was in a cave and there was a grappling hook, because I was really into grappling hooks.
Yeah.
And there was a workout scene in there, because you have to have workout scene.
Yeah.
And so from there I went to college in Wisconsin at Madison. I got a degree in English, and I was going to get a degree in English with a creative writing certificate. Mm-hmm. But the only way to do that was to take another semester of school, and I didn't want to do that. And so I just have an English degree. Hopefully nobody frowns on that, but
nothing to frown on.
And then from there, after I graduated, I moved out to Los Angeles, because like I said, I've always really been into movies, and so I've always really been into writing, and so I just was going to combine those two loves and move out to Los Angeles and become a screenwriter. And that didn't really pan out. I mean, I wrote a couple of screenplays, and I had
About
like
the Jake story,
what's that?
the Jake story with the girlfriend.
No, no. These were kind of darker and more adult, and there's really dark humor in them. They're more kind of like Coen Brothers-esque, I guess you could say.
Oh, okay.
And so then I moved back to
How long were you
Minnesota.
there for?
What's that?
How long were you there for?
For 1 year.
Okay.
So not a ton of time, but my wife, who was my girlfriend at the time, she was living back in Minnesota, and so I moved back to be with her. And then I heard about this, magical thing where you could print on demand, and and I was really interested in this. And so I started writing stories that I thought would be really good. But I was never confident enough in them to actually publish them. So I wrote these stories and just kind of set them aside, and then life happened, and we had a couple of daughters, and like in the back of my mind, I still was like, okay, I got to write stories. I love writing. I got to do it. And one day, my older daughter was sitting at the table, and she was eating some green beans. And she goes, "Dad, these green beans are squeaking." And she starts bopping her head, and she's dancing around. And I go, "That's it. That's my story." And so then I wrote a book called Green Bean Dance. It was a very clever title based on the fact that my daughter was eating green beans and dancing. And so I published that first book in 2014, actually.
And how did it do?
So the very first year, it did amazing, like in terms of what I feel is amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, it did about $2,000.
Nice.
And then, like a month after publishing that book, I also published another book called Colors of Minnesota. And that book is also cleverly titled because it's about colors and about Minnesota. So
how do you come up with these? I don't know.
I know, it's crazy.
Yeah.
They just come to me somehow. But but yeah, that book I wrote for my younger daughter because she was about 2 at the time. And so I was trying to teach her, about her colors and about fun facts about the state that we live in. And that book, actually, I published that one a lot faster than Green Bean Dance just because we have a train that runs between St. Paul and Minneapolis. And they were doing this big show for this big celebration for this train. And I thought that this book would be a really great thing to be able to sell at this celebration. And it might have been, but then there's a giant rainstorm, and everybody's tents were blowing away, and rain, like the tents were, even though they were blowing away, I mean, they really weren't serving any purpose anyways because the rain was like slanting in.
Oh, wow.
And so yeah.
Did your books get ruined, or did you?
No, thankfully they did not. Thankfully they did not get ruined. Because I had most of them in boxes.
Oh yeah, good. Mother Nature.
Yeah.
At her finest. So this book, The Colors of Minnesota, has really taken off in Minnesota, and you have a whole ton of speaking engagements, right, about this book?
Yeah. So in March, March 11th through March 28th, I'm actually going to be speaking at 25 libraries and public schools combined. I got sponsored by the Arrowhead Library System, and they received money from a grant that Minnesota has for the arts and cultural heritage. I believe this was started in 2014 by the legislature, and it's just ways to fund the arts for the states.
Cool. And did somebody reach out to you after having seen your book, or did you pursue, these different avenues?
So I'm very lucky in that I have a lot of super fans. And so a person just came up to me and they're like, hey, I know a person who is involved in this grant process, and I think your book would be something that they'd be interested in. Would you like me to reach out to them for you? And I was like, yeah, of course I would. And thankfully they reached out to them and it worked out. But then I also have like other people who there's a big children's picture book thing in Wisconsin that people have reached out to me about, and they're like, hey, you should really apply for this. I have one person whose like life mission it is to get me on the Ellen DeGeneres show. Like every time I talk to her, she's like, one day I'm going to get you on Ellen. And I'm like,
oh, wow.
Right, I hope that happens.
That would be amazing.
Yeah.
I'll watch you on Ellen.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So how many books are in your veggie series?
So I have 2 books in the Let Us Read About Vegetables series.
Like lettuce?
Yeah, lettuce like lettuce.
That's awesome.
And the funny thing about that is that my mom would always tell us this story about how when she was in church and the pastor would say, let us pray.
Yeah.
But my mom thought the thing, let us pray. And she's like, why would lettuce be praying? Like, that doesn't make sense. So then I was like, oh, well, I want people to read these books, and I'll call them let us read.
Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
So yeah, I have 2 in the Let Us Read About Vegetables series. I have Green Bean Dance, and then I recently published Carrot Cupcakes, which I published in October.
Nice. And the tomato book? Out? Not yet? Out?
Not quite ready yet. Soon. Hopefully within the next.
I read your, there's going to be a tomato book about bullying. And what came to my mind right away was the movie Elf. So you have kids, I'm sure you've seen it.
Yeah.
And when they're talking about the books and the publishers, they're like, what's more vulnerable? Was it a tomato or I think it was a tomato, wasn't it?
I think it was a tomato, yeah.
What's more vulnerable than a tomato? So it cracked me up right away. And
I mean, that's not where I got the idea.
That's okay. Tomatoes,
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk a bit about your process. So you started in 2014. You've been doing it for 4 years. You have 4 books then?
Yep, 4 books currently. The 2 about vegetables, and then I've got 2 in the Let Us Read About Colors. One called Colors of Minnesota, and then one called Colors of Wisconsin.
Is that also lettuce? Lettuce
Yep. Read
about color?
Yeah, so.
Is there vegetables in that one?
No. But what happened, so like in 2014, when I first started doing this, like I really wanted to just have my own imprint. Mm-hmm. I didn't want, all my books to have Amazon on them, for example. And so I came up with this imprint name called Vegetabooks. It's like vegetables, but there's an H in it and a space. And so all my books have this lettuce logo on them.
Oh, okay. Now it makes more sense. Thank you. That's super clever. I love that.
Thank you.
I am not clever at all. Mine are under Laurie. Okay, so the publishing process. So 4 books in 4 years. What have you learned? What have been the big ahas?
So I've learned that it's not a sprint. It's a marathon for me anyways. Mm-hmm. My books about vegetables are actually illustrated by my wife. Mm-hmm. She is also from a very creative, artistic family. Her grandfather was an architect, and her grandmother was a potter, and all her mom and her aunts are all very creative. And so she actually did the illustrations for those 2 books. And she's a lawyer, and I also work full time. Ooh. And so it took a while for the illustrations to get done. And so I learned it's for me, I mean, that's just the way it's going to have to work out. But I mean, I'm lucky that I'm able to work with my wife, and these books I feel are going to be more special for our children and our grandchildren someday, and other people.
It's a legacy you're leaving for them, for sure.
Yeah. And then the ones about the states, like I illustrated those, and then the one about the tomato is actually going to be illustrated by my sister. So,
oh, cool.
Yeah,
Wow.
so it's a whole family ordeal.
Yeah, ordeal. I hope it's not an ordeal.
But yeah, so and like we were saying with so Green Bean Dance, the very first one that I published, that's actually the one that I sell the most of. But because I'm getting this grant money for Colors of Minnesota, that one's actually like moved way far ahead as far as the money I'm making on that.
Oh, good. That's cool. What advice do you have for people just starting out?
I would say, I'm going to steal this from the conference that I met you at, but just press the button. If you don't press the button, I mean, nobody's ever going to read what it is that you've created. And you've spent a lot of time sitting there thinking about this story, and you've sat there and you've put the words down on the paper, and you've either illustrated it yourself or you've gone through the process of finding an illustrator. So you've done all the work. So there's really no reason to just like let it sit on your computer. I mean, just press the button and get it out there. Yes,
I agree wholeheartedly. Are you going to ever press the button for those books you said you started off before Green Bean Dance? Are they gone?
No, I still have them, and they have been edited, and I will probably not take my own advice.
I just read a quote. It was something like, if your first work doesn't embarrass you, like you're starting too late, something like that. So, you got to start. And even if it's kind of crappy or you don't like it, I'm not saying it's crappy. It might be great, but you don't feel
I will tell you that it is really amazing.
It is really amazing? Then push the button. That's funny. I want to hear the Mike story with the grappling hook and the girlfriend in the cave. That sounds very exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe chapter books. Do you think you'll ever do books for adults or just all?
Yeah, actually, I'm in the process of writing some humorous fantasy novels.
Oh.
I'm hoping to, I've written one and I'm about halfway through the second one. And I have titles for the next two after that and some ideas. And so I'm hoping to get those written and then rapid release those. Yeah. So hopefully by the end of the year, I'll have those done.
Wow. You're a busy guy.
Yeah.
That's a lot. That's a lot. So is your family really supportive? are your daughters super proud? How's that going on?
Oh yeah, they're very supportive. And I mean, the girls are so like carrot cupcakes. So the pictures that my wife did on those are of my younger daughter. She's the character in that book. And then Green Bean Dance, the character in that book is my older daughter. And so they're like super excited about that. And then both of them really love reading. And so they keep pressuring me now that they're older to write books more for their age. So I've got a lot of books that I've got to get out there.
You're well planned into 2022.
Yeah, exactly.
Was there anything along the way these past 4 years that really surprised you?
Yes. I would say, well, I was very surprised by like the number of people who are doing this and how, I wouldn't say easy, but like the actual, like once you actually get through doing the work of making the book, actually publishing it itself is easy. Yeah. But then like marketing it is obviously much more difficult. And that's one of the things where I'm actually kind of struggling a little bit is with the marketing aspect of it. I'm not a marketer and by any means. I've never been like a real salesperson.
Mhm.
If I was a Boy Scout and I had to sell popcorn to raise money, and I basically sold to my grandmas.
It's hard. It's hard. And I feel like you're not alone there. So many creative people. It's so hard because we feel so vulnerable about our work. But that's the part that I've fallen in love with, which surprised me. That I love, because I don't consider myself salesy at all, but you know, you don't have to be. So
Yeah, and there's like things are constantly changing in this business. I mean, like things pop up, and then that's like the hot new thing, and everybody just like piles on that thing, and then a couple months later, or like a year later, that thing's disappeared, and now there's a new hot thing. And so things are always changing in this business.
you have to be flexible.
Yeah, very flexible.
Yeah, if you're a super rigid thinker, this might not be the path for you, right? Yeah.
Right.
Amazon's a great example of that over the past 6 months.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so where can people find you? I'll post links, but
so I actually just created a website. That's one of those things that I had to learn, and YouTube was fantastic for that. So I have a website. It's called vegetabooks.com. It's vegetabooks.com. I'm also on Facebook as Vegetabooks, and Twitter as Vegetabooks, and anywhere else where you might find somebody being social. I'm on there.
You're on their big social.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for talking to me today. I really appreciate it. I love
Yeah, thanks for having me.
You're welcome. I'm super excited to follow you and see how it happens in March. That's a lot of speaking.
Yeah. And thankfully I have a forensic background, public speaking background. That's another thing that my grandma, who was an English teacher, was really into. And so like,
yeah. So you're not nervous about it?
I'm always a little nervous right before it starts. And then once it gets going, then I'm okay with it.
Yeah. And after 25 appearances.
Yeah. The 25th one will be the best one.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much.
I'll still say go to the first one and each progressive one, just to make sure that by the 25th one, I'm telling you the truth.
Awesome. Well, thank you and congratulations on all those speaking engagements and your book success.
Thank you.
And anybody watching who wants to hear from more authors, please subscribe. Thanks. Bye, Ryan.
See ya.
You've been listening to the Writer's Way podcast. For show notes, links to guests' information, and to learn more about the Writer's Way, check out lauriewriter.com. Until next week, enjoy this chapter of your life.